Good morning. I want to thank everyone for attending today and giving me an opportunity to show you some of the market feedback that I receive. I'm in a very fortunate and unfortunate position being in sales, and anybody that's in sales recognizes this. You're really at the forefront of getting the information directly from the market that's relevant to your business, not only with product development, but in general, what are the trends and the underlying currents? The unfortunate side is it requires you to make a persuasive argument and provide value to the end customer. For Procentec, we have been around for 18 years. We have distributors globally. Some of them are indeed in the room here today. And although we have a lot of networking components, we are more traditionally known as a diagnostic firm. Our ProfiTrace, if you have been trained, is very often used in most training centers. So if you have the PROFIBUS engineering degree, then you have probably also used our products. I am an American, so that comes with a certain amount of prerequisites, and the first one is a disclaimer on everything we ever do. So my disclaimer is, these are my perceptions and my feedback based off of my experience meeting with customers. So if I present something in here where you say that you disagree, I'm just letting you know ahead of time that these are our perceptions. And here's briefly what I'm going to talk about. Why does this all matter to us in PROFINET and PROFIBUS? What's the challenge, mainly surrounding the discussion that typically occurs when I'm at the table, which is management on one side and maintenance and engineering on the other, and a very basic framework on how to reframe the argument. My experience, I think all of us have had this experience, that if you don't frame the argument, somebody else will for you. So it's very important when you're meeting with somebody, showing them where the value comes from for your product or services. Two examples of the framework and how it would roughly look, and then some summary points as well as just general contact information. So the purpose here today is just to give you that feedback for the maintenance and diagnostics in PROFIBUS and PROFINET. What is the market kind of saying? What are we seeing, and what is the message they're giving us? Some arguments about why a proper diagnostic solution really is important, not only in new but existing installations, and how it's really uncaptured profit. Everyone here on the management side speaks about return on investment. They speak about, I need to increase revenue and profit, and without a proper diagnostic solution or keeping your system running, you're actually leaving that profit on the table. And what would be return on investment in a diagnostic installation? How do you define it? What would it look like, and how do you define it to your customer? So, why does this matter to us? The great transition, and you see the picture, very uniquely made by myself from Google, and it just shows the progression of simply light and where we've come from light all the way to where we're at now, and that's basically Industry 4.0 would be the same thing, moving from no automation to high technology Internet of Things. So some of the market feedback is, PROFINET is the future. No one's going to debate that. I think a lot of what you're going to hear today is all about PROFINET, and there's no problems with that. We all know that. But we also need to realize that PROFIBUS is here for the X future. That's an unknown quantity. Globally, there's a very large installed base of PROFIBUS, and that's not going to change overnight. So we need to continue to support that. PROFINET's loyalty factor is still being defined. Loyalty factor with PROFIBUS was exceptionally strong. People would design products specifically for PROFIBUS, and that's where the realm that they would operate in. Not to take a direct shot at anyone presenting their products out here, because I think all of the presentations are very nice. But I see several manufacturers who have already said to customers, it doesn't matter to me. I'll do any protocol. You tell me what you want and I will put it in the product. And that's a little bit different, I think, than what you've seen in the past with Profibus, in my experience. And a lack of understanding of systems and value with proper upkeep. And that's the next slide. I'm going to talk more about that, which is the argument between management on one side and maintenance and engineering on the other. And I have heard this before. That's why I put it in quotes. I didn't say it's to any one person because it's a combination of multiple statements. But I'm going to spend the money basically on replacing a good system because there's not the same issues that you have with industrial Ethernet. And it really comes down to education. And this was a situation I was in troubleshooting a factory. I tried to go out in the field with our support team. And it was, maybe some people find it funny, but a dog food factory that had just installed Profibus in 2014. And the installer was not properly trained. And we were there troubleshooting it. They ran the Profibus cables with the electrical lines in the same conduit. And the response from management was, if I just rip out all the Profibus cables and put an Ethernet cable in, it'll solve all the problems. That was their response to it. So that's where this quote comes from. But more importantly, what is the challenge between maintenance and engineering versus management? And I hate to say it's versus because they oftentimes are at the same company and they're supposed to be on the same team. But what it really is verse is almost two halves of the brain. And that's the way you have to look at it. So you have one half of the brain that talks in different terms. I need to keep costs down. And the maintenance solution that you're suggesting is a cost for me. And maintenance and engineering is saying, I just need to keep the system running. And you need to work with me, management, to keep that system running. Management also needs to have the progression perception. Many people feel that if I'm a manager, I need to be, quote, in the know. I need to know what the next thing is because that's what everyone expects out of me. And that's the progression perception. So if I'm a new manager, and I think we have all been in this situation, either as a manager or being underneath the manager, they immediately want to come in and change everything because they want to say, I'm in the know on something that you may not know. But you are the engineer and the maintenance, and you have been around. You know your system better than anybody. Maintenance and engineering is, again, training and clarity. New system means new knowledge. And I put it up here because it is a challenge in a lot of ways. But it's not a challenge of capabilities. It's oftentimes a challenge of time. You're so focused on keeping the system running, and you have a manager or management that it says we're moving in this direction, whatever direction it may be, and you need to keep your system running, but then you also, at the same time, are lacking that time to actually sit down and learn and realize exactly what it takes to be an expert in that field. And management, again, speaks in return and investment and growth. And at the end of the day, maintenance and engineering is just simply seeking solutions for the challenges. I need an easy solution for the challenge to keep the system running that doesn't require me a month of brand new training to learn. So, moving right along to what would this look like? And it may look very messy, and I'm going to just try to make it very simple. The chart has up and down axis, which is the cost. And it could be decreased upfront cost or increased upfront costs. And on the bottom, you have temporary or permanent use. And then in between, you have a lifetime return on investment. And a lifetime return on investment is because if you have a right diagnostic system, you will continue to get a return on investment. And a lot of people think it's a one-time investment. I get a return and I never have to use it again. But that's just simply not the conditions in which we operate in. And I'll give you an example from the steel industry in Europe. And there's 3 main boxes and 2 areas that you don't really want to be in, and I've put a key in here, and simply it is Solution 1, I call it the digital compass solution. This is a simple, handheld, powerful tool, screwdriver, that allows you to go out in the field, quickly determine what's going on and fix it. But there is a limited upside. It still requires you that the system has now broken, and now you have to go and identify what the problem is. It's typically not used as a preventative maintenance measure. Solution 2, I call the digital map. It's somewhere in between. It could be permanently installed, but it may not be looked at regularly. And you typically need a solution 1 to work with solution 2 to fix the problem that's within the system. And then solution 3, as I call it, Google Maps on a smartphone. This is typically the solution that you have on your smartphone. Google Maps, I think we pretty much all have it. It's not only telling you what direction, it's telling you where to turn, it's telling you in a lovely voice exactly what you're doing wrong, typically with the words recalculating. It does get you there at the end of the day, and it gives you a much quicker head start than you would have if you just had the digital compass. I have an NGI and an NGA, which is basically no-go investment. High upfront cost that you let sit on a shelf and temporarily use, doesn't have a very high return on investment. And then on the bottom you have an NGA, which is a no-go asset. It's a very cheap, permanent solution, but it doesn't provide a lot of the information that Google Maps would provide. And there is one more, which is I call the perfect solution. And this is what I hear regularly in the market. Can't you just, and we've all heard those 3 little lovely words, either oftentimes from my wife, but sometimes also from my customers. Can't you just produce this product? And I call it the perfect coffee machine. Wakes you up in the morning, walks the dog, starts the car, cleans everything up, washes itself, you come down and everything's done. This just doesn't exist. But this is a reality of the market we operate in, and it's also a challenge because a lot of times customers will say to us, well, come back when you have this, and it's just not a reality. And I do want to note in here that cost is a perspective. Depending upon who you're speaking with, the term cost means something different. I'm going to try to just explain to you very briefly in application how roughly this would look. And this is from an actual steel plant that we have done a diagnostic solution for. I cannot disclose to you where it is, but I could say it is in the EU. And I could say that their total estimated revenue on a downtime was in the neighborhood of 1,500 euros a minute. That's 1 minute, 1,500 euros. So as I'm speaking to the guy for 10 minutes, you guys start running the meter, and that's the point of what I'm saying. Is if you have a gross profit margin of, let's just say 15%, after all of your costs of input, you have some overhead that would be in the last 15%, and you're running 24 hours a day. Gives you a number of production days, 90% uptime. Let's be honest, you have to upgrade your plant, you have to do preventative and planned maintenance. And let's just say you have unscheduled downtime of 1%. That's almost 78 hours of unscheduled downtime. And that could be all over the facility in different locations. It doesn't have to be the whole facility. But here's the term that I have heard from multiple locations, and this goes across all sectors. Big data, PROFINET, Internet of Things, everything connected. The downside is, so is management, and they know what's going on in their facility. I heard from 2 different industries, the steel industry as well as logistics industry. I've heard this twice now. If my system's down in 15 minutes, I have some manager calling me asking me, why isn't the system running? Do you have any clue how much revenue we're losing? In one case, the gentleman was located in the UK and he gets a call from somewhere in the US. Because the person in the US has his cell phone tied in and he gets a text message and says, we're losing money in the UK. This is the reality. This is also how you need to start to define what is the solutions that are going to help bring that value. So let's just look at the digital compass, very simple. And I talk about the ProfiTrace. It was mentioned earlier in a presentation, and I call it the digital compass because it has all of these features built in. And what does that allow you to do? Let's just do a rough estimation. An experienced ProfiTrace user, within about 10 minutes, can get a complete overview of the network. And we estimate that that reduces the downtime, the portion where you're diagnosing the downtime, but let's just say 5 or 10%. It's really dependent upon the situation, what the failure is, but let's just say it's 5 or 10%. Well, that's 4 hours of reduced downtime in a year. 14 times the return on your investment. 40,000 euros for, let's just say, a 10,000 euro investment when you include training in the actual unit. It's a 440% return on investment. These are the numbers that managers want to see because they take it to their upper management and say, I just made you 440% on an investment, and everyone gets excited. And the next step is you're now doing the whole facility with maintenance solutions and diagnostic solutions. Or solution 3, more of a preventative maintenance solution. Google Maps with a smartphone. We refer to it as a Combrix solution. It's telling you preventatively, this is what's going to happen in your network. 24/7, let's say 25 to 30%. It's a smaller return on investment, but it's an increased gross margin of 200,000. This was the argument that the maintenance guy made at the steel company. I make this investment, one prevented downtime pays for the whole system. And that's the argument that maintenance and engineering professionals need to really bring to management, because that's where the value is at. And with tightening budgets and with the way the environment is that we currently operate in, especially in a country, say, of Australia, where I hear about the commodity super cycle, you guys have been significantly affected, the big investment is not coming. So how do I increase the margins for my company without spending a ton of money? And that's the argument that needs to be made. Summary points, as I'm running out of time here. The struggles, they must be overcome to show value. General framework can be used, and this could be used in other industries. The individual sitting in the crowd, but I spoke with them last night, and they said about defining the value of safety on their products. How do you define the value of safety to somebody? And this can also be used for that. Knowledge and training are necessary. You need to understand the true cost of failure, and there is an internal profit to be made, even in safety. Even on PROFIBUS PROFINET. What is the profit, in this case, or the lost profit of not having somebody on the line because something wasn't safe? General learning points and market feedback. Point 1, there's a perception in the market that diagnostics are not necessary with industrial Ethernet. That is the perception. Number 2, we have to keep the existing knowledge base in place as the transition occurs. Oftentimes when people speak about PROFINET, industrial Ethernet, they're so excited about industrial Ethernet, it's a either or. And we say it's an and but. The transition is currently occurring. In many cases, people that have installed systems 1, 2, 5 years ago are not going to immediately remove it and put in an industrial Ethernet solution. So we need to continue to support them. And the last part is actually specifically about PI International. This is also something I see in the market, is that they seem to be, in our experience, operating within PI International, the only organization that really has an organized universal message about this. If you are meeting with customers and you ask them what is the Internet of Things, Industry 4.0, the first response I get is, I actually don't know. I'm not sure yet, and we haven't developed the final strategy. But I think you're going to hear a lot about today, what is that strategy moving forward and what does it mean? And that's very important. It's very important for us to all have a universal message because, let's be honest, it can be a very confusing marketplace. That is the reality. So how do we reduce that confusion and make it a very clear, this is the value add of our systems? And that's 19 minutes and 55 seconds. You said 20 minutes. So, dead on. Thank you for your time.